for the media industry, it's a way of really rejuvenating a really old genre called the talent contest. I mean, what appears to be something brand new goes way, way back. So it's a new version of the talent contest. For audiences, obviously, it's a lot to do with the new kind of reality TV celebrity culture, which mixes up the idea of being famous on the one hand, and on the other hand, being dead ordinary. They start with the shiny world of the media. That's the premise. That's the beginning. Some people clearly have a pretty low threshold about what humiliation is. It seems to me that it's not a good thing to display people's humiliation for the sake of it. But I think the X Factor does a lot of other things as well. It genuinely does find talent. It genuinely looks for people who can sing and dance and who can produce a good act. So the humiliation thing is, if you like, tangential to the thing that it does. And yes, have I laughed? I have. No, I mean, the X Factor is premised on media interest. The X Factor is a media phenomenon. And I think one of the interesting things for me about the X Factor is the way it marks a shift in the structure of the music industry, the way the music industry works. You know, again, if you go back to the rock model, rock depends on the idea that record companies are at the centre of everything. Rock works by record companies selecting from, if you like, a pool of people who are out there already making music, you know, local music scenes. The X Factor and other developments like it work from a completely different way. They begin with television. Now, it's an important shift because it means that record companies are no longer really in control here. These acts are being sponsored by TV, they start off with TV, the talent is being sought through TV. No doubt that A&R men, and they usually are men in record companies, are now looking, you know, quite fearfully at what's happening with reality TV music shows, because in some senses it's an alternative route for people to get into music making. As far as the media is concerned, it marks a shift towards media taking the lead, taking the initiative, taking control, if you like, in relation to music making. And that's something which is new, but on the other hand it also harks back, because if you think about going back to the 50s, 40s, 30s, you know, in those days the music industry really was a multimedia platform. Think about artists like Frank Sinatra or Rosemary Clooney or any of those artists in that era. They too depended on films, they depended on radio, just as much as they did on recording. Well, in one sense, yes. The story could be just how bloody amazing you are as a music maker, as a performer. But yes, it's true that how the X Factor works is by suggesting that the rags to riches story is intrinsic to being a music maker. In other words, it's not something that's just in the background anymore and you simply come up with this music. It's actually foregrounded, it's actually made key. So yes, it is true that you have to have a story. In some ways it's more honest on X Factor. Celebrity is being presented as, yes, part of the package, if you like. Whereas in the case of rock music, there was also something rather strangely hypocritical about rock acts pretending in some sense or other they weren't really interested in fame, they weren't interested in glory, they weren't interested in being gawped at, loved. Because actually, you know, that's actually in a sense what the whole of popular music is all about. It's about the more people who love you and adore you. In some senses, not only the more successful commercially you are, but the more successful artistically you are. There's a sense in which those two things tie in. So, from one way of looking at it, you could argue that the focus on celebrity is a good thing, a more honest thing. I think that there's no immediate sign of it dissipating. Again, to answer it in a more boring way, I'm an academic, I do boring stuff, it would be to say that it's to do with the structure of the industry. I don't see any signs of the kind of talent spotting model that we have in rock and before reviving again.